trip thingy because I don't really care about the rest. But when they go on the fishing trip in class, basically, Boruto Christian, Sardo would, Boruto says, who wants to go? Kit, and then, he says, hey Christian, you want to go camping? He says, not today, I have things to do. He says, like what? He says, writing a note to a bully so he stops talking to me because he's annoying. He says, why don't you go teach him a lesson? He says, because I'm not like you, Boruto. I don't get off with stuff so easily. He also says, I don't want my house being destroyed again by my mom by punching the ground. And he says, once I finish this note, telling him to shut his mouth and basically just roasting him. He says, I'm kidding. I wasn't doing anything. I was just bored. He says, so sure, I'll go camping. Then they see a little thing about the eternal carp. Well, actually, he's at the him and Thing are at the Thunderburger. He goes, Then Shikadai, Gene, and Chocho walk over and Boruto says, Chocho, Shikadai, do you guys want to come and sit over? He says, sure, Boruto. And they go and sit over with him. Oh yeah, just to point it out, Christian's not wearing the Sasuke clothes yet from when he had a Genin. He's not wearing them yet. I just wanted to point that out. Well, actually, he is wearing it. I'm gonna give him the Chunin exams outfit for his Genin outfit, whatever. So when they hear about the fish, then also Mitsuki appears and says, "Is something bothering you, Boruto?" He says, Boruto says, how did you get here? Person says, I have a theory how Mitsuki moves around everywhere. He goes, and what is your theory? He says, you turn into a snake and then just slither around everywhere. He says, this is not confirmed in canon, so I can't really say anything about that. A little like a rock star, living like a moose star. He says, that's just my theory. He says, well, I don't. He says, you'll never find out. He goes, well, so then they go on their little camping trip. But Christian has to go home and eat dinner first. Then, while he's eating, Sakura asks him if Sardo's okay. Christian says, she ain't okay. He goes, okay, what's wrong with her? He says, Boruto thought that everyone was gonna blah 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 blah. He says, you explain it, Sarada. I'm too busy because I have to go. He goes, oh, you're going on the trip too? He says, of course I am. I wouldn't miss out on something like this. He goes, we're gonna catch the eternal carp. He says, and I have a different strategy. I'm not using a fishing rod. He says, I'm gonna jump into the river thing and grab it. He says, you know that thing is humongous. He goes, yep. And she says, so Sardo, what's wrong? She says, stupid Boruto. He's just so stupid. Exact line from the anime alert. He says, you know, I used to call Naruto stupid. He says, Nandaime? He says, yeah, and I'm pretty sure Dad used to call him a loser. He says, oh yeah, he did. Which translate to, so I don't get you. He goes, Gato! Then she says, come on, you have to have a little bit of fun. He says, well, I'm going. Then body flickers out. Body flickers to the kitchen. He says, holy crap, there's a lot of dishes. He goes, Kazubushi! And then two of his clones stay there, cleaning up the dishes. He goes, He says, done. Then they poof. He says, your brother may not be too that intelligent, but he is helpful, and he protects you. He'd always protect you. You're like, you know that, right? Just to let you know. He goes, really? He says, yep. He says, you're technically his little sister. He goes, wait a minute. He's older? She says, by about 5 seconds. Then he appears back saying, ha! She says, wait, you weren't even out of the house? He goes, kind of was, kind of wasn't. He says, no, I literally have to go. Then he says, hi guys. They go, hi. Then they do the little thing, and then they go to catch the eternal carp. Then he says, Then later at night they go and eat their curry. I think it's curry. Then they head back. Then Boruto is fishing while Christian says, you alright, bro? He goes, no, it's just that I kind of wish that we could find it. He says, look, I already know what I'm going to do when we find it. Then Boruto gets a bite. Then Christian sees that it's huge. He says, alright, Boruto. Pulls off his shirt and jumps in the water. He goes, what the? He goes, Sardo runs over and says, I heard a splash. He says, yeah, your brother Christian just jumped in the water because he saw the eternal carp. He's got in his grass. He goes, get back here, you little. Then kicks it up in the air. He goes, but it doesn't go too high. He goes, why, you little. Trying to fight it, but then he gets bit. He goes, oh, you little shit. Then goes, lightning paw. And then hits it. He goes, Shikadai says, why is there 2 figures in the water? He says, one of them's Christian's, one of them's the eternal carp. Then he gets a bite. Then Boruto gets the bite. Christian says, I got you, you little. Then pulls out a kunai and stabs it. He goes, then he gets weakened, and then they're trying to pull it up. Then she uses her thing, but the stab doesn't really pierce the skin. He goes, because they're also underwater. He goes, then he tries to push the thing up. He goes, he says, guys, I'm pushing it up. It's a little hard. He goes, Misi says, is he alright? Then he says, help. Then he appears up for a sec going, help. Then he says, you know what? Then he goes back up and says, damn you, tiger shark. Then goes under and says, there's a shark down there. He goes, he goes, come here, you little Then kicks the shark up in the air. He goes, that's it. Fire style, fireball jutsu. Hitting it, incinerating the shark. He says, eat that, you stupid shark. He says, then he jumps back up there and gets the shirt back on and his glove and his little arm things and helps. He goes, ah. Then Shikadai shadow possessions. Mitsuki goes for a lightning thing. Then the new thing also makes the rope unbreakable. The line unbreakable. Then Iwabei does his mud wall, and then they're raining down from above. Christian says, out of the way! He goes, wind style, wind current! He says, water style, ruptured wave! Then he also goes, lightning style, thunderclap! Then he goes, then he charges up so much chakra in his hands and goes, ah! Then the thing gets a little bit bigger. His lightning palm gets a little bigger and turns into a mini Chidori. And he goes, ah, mini Chidori! Then goes, ah, activating a shouting gun. Then hitting the thing, electrocuting it. It goes, then Boruto and Sarda and all of them pull it up. He goes, yeah! Then they eat it. Christian's not really eating it. He goes, Sarda says, hey Christian, aren't you gonna eat? He says, not a seafood fan. He says, but I'll take a bite. He takes a bite out and goes, ah. He goes, what's wrong? He says, it's so plain. She goes, don't you dare. He says, oh yeah. Then he pulls out hot sauce and pours it on the fish. He goes, shh. Then he pulls, but first he puts salt on it. He salts it and goes, shh, 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 shh. Then he says, oh, and says, this is the best thing. He goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. Christian says, this is dumb. He says, what's wrong? He says, this looks nothing like it did on the commercial. It looked like freaking mashed potatoes on the commercial. Now it just looks like fish on a stick. What the hell? We were robbed. He goes, I was looking forward to some fish mashed potatoes, but nah, I got a fish popsicle. Ah! Then the next day, they did the little interview things. Boruto's would go the same, but Christian's would go different. He says, alright, so it seems you're doing very good in your classes. He goes, hee. He says, you're smart, nice. You like to ship Boruto and Sarda. He nods his head going, She says, what does ship mean? He says, he says, basically when you put two people who like each other but they just hide it and ship them. He says, at first I thought you said S-H-I-T. He goes, then you'd be grounded. He goes, Then he says, the graduation exams are coming up. He says, what do you hope to be a shinobi? He says, a shinobi that protects people from the shadows. Almost like he says, Sarda already wants to become Hokage, so I want to become the Shadow Kage, the Shadow Hokage. He says, wow, that's literally just like your father, which he is. He says, then I'll be taking that spot. He says, you do kind of look like Sasuke. He says, no, I don't. He has flat hair. He has flat hair. I have spiky, which makes no sense. Nobody had spiky hair. He says, also, my hair is light. He says, this is confusing. I had this Sharingan. My hair is spiky and it looks like Lord Seventh's. But this doesn't make sense. He says, look, he says, I'm not gonna go too much into detail. Then moving on to the graduation exams, they have to do the written exam. He easily passes it with his Sharingan, easily cheating off the papers that Denki gave them. Then moving on to the fight thing. So when this starts, he goes, oh, Kakashi, it's you. He goes, hello there. I will be also in this exam. He goes, alright, I call hacks, but whatever. He goes, so when it starts, the Jonin and all, they all explain how you have to touch their target. But for Kakashi, they have to grab the bells. Honestly, the Lethal Boruto stream would have been really good then. He says, I'm ready. Then the Jonin disappear, and so do the Chit. He says, I'm going to take out Konohamaru. Then, instantly, Sumire and Namida are knocked out. Not like their white band hasn't been taken away, but they have been knocked out by Konohamaru. He says, Konohamaru, it's Boruto, Sarda, and Christian, aka the original Team 7, aka, because they're like the sons of Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura. The children. Christian and Sarda activate their Sharingan doing. Then he says, so I guess we'll fight. Then Christian rushes at him and punches. Konohamaru blocks it and grabs the back of his shoulder and slams him to the ground. Christian smirks and then kicks Konohamaru in the face somehow. He goes, eat that! He says, also, and then he says, then when they really aren't doing so good against him, Christian stabs himself with a kunai in the chest. He goes, He says, did he just kill himself? But then he poofs and says, I'm above! Then slams down, but Konohamaru would dodge. He goes, dang it, swinging, but he keeps on dodging. He goes, stop dodging, you coward! Then Konohamaru would go for a strike, he'd block. He goes, and he goes, Gokaku! Then he jumps to the left, and then they slide, then they disappear. I'm just gonna skip to where that they've gotten all the Jonin, and now it's time to fight Kakashi. He says, trying to ambush me? But then Kakashi gets grabbed from below. He says, trying to rip off like the hands off his legs. Then Boruto's clones come and he just fights them up. And then he keeps on getting dragged down, more by second. Then he's kicked in the stomach by someone. He goes, oh! Then he's thrown up in the air. He goes, then when they all go at him, they go, but then they're all easily defeated. The Boruto clones are all easily defeated. But then they poof back to the classmates. He goes, Christian and Boruto are the only ones standing. He goes, Sharingan! And he goes, and kicks, like doing the Sasuke boy combo, going, Then he goes to snatch the bells. He goes, this kid! But then he moves his hand a little bit up, punching Kakashi in the gut. Then they do string light. Then out of nowhere, the entire class goes for a string light formation, holding Kakashi down. Boruto stuck in it. He says, wait a minute, where's Christian? He goes, and snatches the bells. He goes, yeah, we got it! We did it! He says, you all passed. Wait, no, he doesn't say that yet. He says, dang it, now he's the only... Then they all say, well, at least one of us passed. He goes, nope, y'all passed. They all go, hey, it's Stavru Rocco, right to Rocco, right is tricky. Then he gets his headband. And he goes, awesome! Then they head home and says, Christian's already go, well, Christian goes, he goes, he says, we pass! Then when they get home the next day, well, actually, no, he goes, The next day he gets a brand new outfit, Sasuke's Chunin exams outfit. He goes, awesome! He puts it on and heads there. So then when he's trying to talk to Sarada, well, he is, Iwabe accidentally elbows him and they go for a kiss. Then Christian taps Boruto's head, which makes him go even farther. But then he puts his hand in between saying, stop! But then he moves his hand up, and then Boruto gets a boot to the face. Christian goes, jeez, he didn't even mean to. You could have just moved out of the way. She says, but then Chocho, no, he says, she's too far away from him. You didn't have to boot him in the face. She says, okay, time to select the teams. Team 10, Shikadai Nara, Inoji and Yamanaka, Chocho Akimichi. Then after that they go blah 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 blah. He says finally Team 3, Boruto Uzumaki, Sarada Uchiha, Mitsuki, and Christian Uchiha. He says, why is there 4? He says, well, there's an uneven amount in the class, so you're just put on the final team. He goes, okay. He goes, woohoo! Then they need their sensei, which is Konohamaru. And that's it for this part.